There's something unsettling about the woods at night. In the daylight, they seem peaceful, trees swaying gently, birdsong filling the air, sunlight painting everything in a warm glow. But when the sun goes down, the forest transforms. The trees no longer feel alive. They feel like watchers. The silence is heavier, suffocating, like the woods themselves are holding their breath. That's exactly what Alex and his two closest friends, Emily and Josh, discovered on a camping trip one summer night. They weren't thrill seekers, they weren't daredevils. They were just three ordinary friends looking to escape the noise of the city and reconnect with nature. But what they found wasn't peace. It wasn't freedom. It was a terror so real that years later Alex still wakes up in the middle of the night, convinced he hears footsteps crunching outside his window. This is the creepiest true camping story he has ever told. It started simple enough. Alex had borrowed his uncle's old camping gear, Josh carried his father's heavy-duty flashlight, and Emily packed enough snacks to feed an army. Their plan was simple: one weekend off the grid, away from phones, noise, and stress. The three of them had been friends since middle school, and this trip felt like a chance to relive old times. Just laughter, firelight, and the kind of freedom that only comes from being surrounded by nature. They drove 2 hours into the mountains, singing along to the radio until the signal cut out, their voices filling the silence. When the paved road turned to gravel, Emily leaned forward, eyes wide with excitement. "This is perfect," she whispered as tall pines stretched skyward, blotting out the fading afternoon sun. Eventually, they found a narrow trail that led them to a small clearing near a trickling stream. It was beautiful, untouched, almost too untouched. The air was sharp and clean, carrying the cool scent of damp earth and pine needles. Alex set up his uncle's battered old tent while Josh struck flint against steel until sparks caught on dry moss. Emily unpacked food, humming to herself as she laid out chips, chocolate, and trail mix. By dusk, they were roasting marshmallows over the fire, sticky sugar dripping from their fingers as they laughed at stories too embarrassing to share anywhere else. Ghost stories followed naturally, the kind told 100 times before with exaggerated jumps and giggles that echoed into the trees. For a while, it felt perfect, the kind of night they'd remember years later as one of those golden, carefree memories. And yet something wasn't right. It was Alex who noticed first. Between bursts of laughter, he realized how quiet it was. Too quiet. The only sound came from the rushing stream and the occasional crack of firewood shifting in the flames. No crickets. No rustling leaves. No hoots of owls. The forest, normally so alive, was eerily still. Emily was the next to pick up on it. She hugged her jacket tighter and leaned closer to the fire. "Do you guys hear that?" she asked. "Or, not hear it? It's like the forest is holding its breath." Josh, always the skeptic, smirked. "You've just been watching too many horror movies. Sometimes nature is just quiet." He tossed another log onto the fire, sparks spiraling up into the darkening sky. But Alex wasn't convinced. When he let his eyes drift toward the tree line, something shifted. The shadows seemed thicker, heavier, as though they weren't just shadows at all. A shape, too tall, too still, seemed to linger between the trees. And when he blinked, it was gone. He shook his head, forcing a laugh to join the others. But deep down, unease coiled in his stomach. The forest wasn't silent by accident. It wasn't resting. It was listening. And though none of them would admit it aloud, they all felt it. A presence waiting just beyond the firelight. Watching. Patient. The forest wasn't empty. It had never been empty. It was waiting for them. The night deepened quickly, the last traces of twilight swallowed by the forest canopy. The campfire burned brighter against the dark, its glow carving a fragile circle of safety around the three friends. Beyond that, the woods stretched into blackness, impenetrable and endless. Emily poked at the fire with a stick, the crackling wood the only sound filling the clearing. "I don't like this," she murmured. "It feels wrong, like the whole forest is staring at us." Josh exhaled sharply, flicking his flashlight on and sweeping the beam across the trees. The white light cut through the dark, revealing nothing but trunks and tangled branches. "See, nobody out there. It's just nerves." He clicked the light off with finality, smirking as though the matter were settled. But Alex couldn't relax. His skin prickled, a crawling unease running down his spine. "That's the problem," he said quietly. "Nothing's out there. No animals, no insects, nothing. Forests don't go dead quiet unless something's wrong." His words hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. Emily stopped fidgeting, her eyes darting to the tree line. For a moment, none of them spoke, listening intently. The fire popped, echoing too loudly in the silence. Then, snap. All three heads whipped toward the sound, the unmistakable crack of a branch breaking under weight. It came from the darkness beyond the stream. Emily's breath hitched as she grabbed Alex's arm. Josh sat up straighter, his smirk fading. "Probably a deer," he whispered, though even he didn't sound convinced. His flashlight clicked on again, the beam jerking toward the trees. Nothing moved. Nothing stirred. The woods were still, and yet Alex swore he saw it again, that faint suggestion of a figure standing among the trunks. Too tall, too motionless, watching. He blinked and it was gone, his heart hammered against his ribs. He wanted to tell the others what he'd seen, but the words caught in his throat. If he admitted it aloud, it would be real. The fire crackled weakly, its glow seeming smaller, weaker against the suffocating dark. Emily pulled her knees to her chest, her face pale in the flickering light. For the first time, Josh had nothing to say. The silence pressed in tighter, heavier, until the night itself felt alive. And somewhere in that dark wall of trees, something was waiting for them to notice it again. The fire had burned low, collapsing into glowing embers that pulsed like a heartbeat. Shadows crawled across the clearing, twisting with every flicker of flame. The three friends sat shoulder to shoulder now, huddled closer than before, the silence between them louder than any words. Alex stared into the dark, his eyes straining against the blackness beyond the trees. Every so often he thought he caught movement, a pale shimmer here, a shift of shadow there. Each time he blinked, it vanished, leaving only the sway of branches in the night air. Emily broke the silence first. "Do you feel that?" she whispered. Alex frowned. "Feel what? Like someone's behind us?" Josh tried to laugh, but it came out flat. He swung his flashlight in a wide arc across the forest, his hand trembling just enough for the beam to shake. The light swept through trunks, branches, and undergrowth. Empty. It always came back empty. And yet the feeling lingered. Heavy. Oppressive. Alex swallowed hard, gathering his courage. He stood slowly, as if afraid the movement would draw attention. "I'm going to check," he muttered, though his voice cracked halfway through. Emily reached for his arm. "Don't. Too late." Josh followed with the flashlight, stepping just beyond the fire's glow. The beam caught on something pale between the trees. He froze, the light trembling in his hand. "Wait," Alex said, voice barely audible. "Do you see that?" Emily's breath hitched as she looked over their shoulders. There, standing between two massive trunks, was a figure, tall, unmoving, cloaked in shadow, but unmistakably human-shaped. The light touched its form, revealing just enough, a long, tattered white dress that hung limply, brushing the ground, bare feet pale as bone against the dark forest floor, and hair, long, black, tangled, spilling forward to obscure the face. It didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't blink. It simply stood there, staring at them with a stillness more terrifying than any scream. Emily whimpered, clutching at Alex's sleeve. "Oh my God, it's real. It's real." Josh's bravado crumbled. His voice shook as he whispered, "That's not a person." As the three of them watched, the figure shifted slightly as though leaning forward. Just enough to suggest intent, watching, listening. Alex's chest tightened. He wanted to run, but his legs wouldn't respond. It was as though the forest itself had rooted him in place. The fire hissed and cracked, throwing sparks upward. For an instant, the light flared and the figure was gone. The three friends sat frozen, staring into the empty gap between the trees where it had been only seconds ago. But deep down, they all knew the truth. It hadn't left, it had simply moved, and now it was closer. The clearing seemed to shrink, the darkness pressing in tighter with every passing second. None of them spoke. None of them even breathed too loudly. The fire crackled weakly, its glow too faint to offer any real safety. Then came the sound, soft, deliberate footsteps, leaves crunching just beyond the tree line, slow, measured, as though whoever or whatever was out there didn't need to rush. It already knew they weren't going anywhere. Emily clutched Alex's arm so tightly her nails dug into his skin. Josh, gripping the flashlight with white knuckles, swung the beam toward the noise. For an instant, the light caught her again, the woman in white. Closer this time, just inside the trees. Her pale face was still hidden by her hair, but there was no mistaking her presence. The sight made Alex's stomach lurch. She was only a few feet away now, as though the forest had delivered her straight to the edge of their world. "Stay back," Josh shouted, his voice cracking. The flashlight beam trembled wildly. The woman didn't flinch. She simply tilted her head, slow and unnatural, as if studying them. The firelight danced across her figure, making the tatters of her dress look like writhing shadows. Then, as the three friends stared, she stepped forward. One bare, pale foot pressing onto the dirt of the clearing. Emily's breathing quickened into sobs. Alex felt frozen between fight and flight, but neither option seemed possible. The fire sputtered, sending sparks into the air. Light momentarily brightened the clearing. And just like before, she vanished. But this time, Alex swore he heard it. A whisper. A voice carried by the trees, low and cold, calling his name. The whisper of Alex's name still clung to the air, sending a shiver through his bones. He wanted to deny it, to convince himself it was only the wind, but deep down he knew something out there wanted him. Josh yanked at his arm. "We're leaving, now." His voice was sharp, panicked. But Alex noticed how it shook, like he was seconds from breaking. They grabbed what they could. The flashlight, Emily's half-empty bag of snacks, Alex's jacket. The rest of the camp, tent, bags, food, was abandoned in the dirt. None of it mattered anymore. They needed distance. The three stumbled into the trees, their footsteps clumsy in the dark. The fire's glow disappeared behind them, leaving only shadows and the narrow beam of Josh's flashlight. Every crunch of leaves beneath their feet sounded deafening, but the forest was not silent anymore. Somewhere behind them, the same deliberate footsteps followed, slow, careful, patient. Emily clutched Alex's hand, whispering prayers under her breath. "Please, please, please." "Don't look back," Josh hissed. His words were brave, but his eyes kept darting over his shoulder. The flashlight flickered, then steadied as though fighting something unseen. With every failing pulse of light, Alex thought he saw her, a glimpse of white, a shadow just beyond reach. Each time she was closer. Finally, they broke into a clearing, chest heaving, sweat cold on their skin. For a moment, they thought they were safe, but then they saw it. On the far side of the clearing, etched deep into the trunk of a massive oak, was a symbol. A jagged circle with spiraling lines that seemed to writhe in the moonlight, and standing beneath it was the woman. Her hair parted just enough for them to see her face, pale, hollow, with eyes that glowed faintly like dying embers. Her lips moved, whispering words they could not understand. The sound wasn't carried by air but by bone. They felt it inside themselves. Emily fell to her knees, sobbing. Josh raised the flashlight as though it were a weapon, though his hands trembled uncontrollably. Alex stared at the woman, heart pounding. The realization struck him with horrifying clarity. She wasn't chasing them. She was hurting them, leading them to this place, to this symbol. The forest had never been empty. They had walked straight into its ritual. To this day, Alex avoids camping. He avoids lonely roads lined with trees. Even a walk in the park at dusk makes him uneasy, because he knows some forests aren't just forests. Some are alive in ways we can't understand, echoing our voices, feeding on our fear, testing how far we'll go to protect the ones we love. That night in the woods wasn't just about terror. It was about sacrifice, about friendship, about courage in the face of something no human should ever encounter. And maybe that's why they survived. But sometimes late at night, Alex swears he hears it again. A faint voice calling from outside his window. His own voice whispering, "Help me."